We are live. What
Yeah.
is going on, Mr. Thomas?
What's happening?
So we were just talking backstage, y'all. In case y'all don't know, Thomas upgraded. He's got some super fancy. Did you say 8-hour headset, Mike?
We'll see. We shall see. This is a
Okay.
test.
Nice.
It had
Nice.
the longer battery. My previous headset only lasted 2, and we always came right up it. So we did a little PDCA. The important thing about doing PDCA is the doing part. Often gets skipped. It often gets skipped. I love the planning part. Oh, I love it because it's so fun. You get to go buy stuff.
Yep.
You get to think about. You get to like do research.
Oh yeah.
And then you get to the the doing.
Yep.
And the doing requires action.
Yes.
Action and stuff because it requires burning calories, and we are programmed to conserve energy. If you don't believe me, we're going to talk about how that comes into play. There are perhaps some laws in systems thinking that come into play, but yeah, you have to do, and then you have to the thing in PDCA. It's not plan, do, cease, and abandon. That's the normal cycle is PDCA, but it's actually check and adjust. So today we're going to do the experiment for everybody. Will my headset last the entire? And then if it doesn't, then I will go to a fully wired system because that's we have more cycles to go. So I will again check and adjust, and we'll go from there. So that's a PDCA. So it's important to do and to check and to adjust. But then, like a circle, there is no end.
Yes.
It's like yoga or medicine. It's a practice.
Yes.
And it's never ending. I got some tidbits. I got some gold.
Yeah.
Queued up. I think I told you about one. Yes. But there was a lot in the last 2 weeks. There was a lot that happened. I don't know if you were living under a rock in the last 2 weeks. There was a lot that went down. Holy shnikes. We're gonna keep it kind of professional here and not political, but there was some content that got put up by a friend of both of ours, Felipe Engineer Manriquez.
Yep.
And his son, Noah, he interviewed his son, and I got all kinds of quotes, and I linked it to this book, Fifth Discipline.
Fifth Discipline.
And those 11 laws. Yeah. So thank you, Felipe, and thank you, Noah. Putting yourself out there for anyone to go and see, like just taking your content and putting it out there, it takes so much courage.
Man, he's a young little dude too. That's the beautiful part.
When I was in 9th grade, the internet really was kind of a joke, so we couldn't really upload video. So
right.
It was around, but you had to dial up. You had to call on your phone to get to the internet.
It's funny.
Millennials
from the landline, not your cell phone, from the landline.
Up. Yeah, so if your mom picked up the phone to call, the neighbor or something, your chat got blown up.
Oh yeah.
So there's that, but yeah, like when we talk about planning and doing the step in between that, and I say this a lot, but it takes courage.
Yep.
To go from planning to doing. And people are like, what's courage, Thomas? And courage is seeing risk, seeing challenge, seeing fear, looking it right in the face and saying, I'm going to still go forward and do my thing.
Yep. Yep.
And that is, and we cherish, like, as we're going to talk about some movies,
Oh yeah.
We, as a human society, cherish that behavior because why? It's incredibly rare.
Yes.
Incredibly rare. And when it happens, it's usually fleeting, like you don't even notice it. But sometimes it's very completely obvious as well. And the most obvious levels of that, we celebrate it, and we call it valor. It's like it's on the Medal of Honor too, that word valor. And it's because it's like the ultimate fear, and facing your ultimate fear is death, right? So that one is like, in terms of scale, is we cherish, at least here in the United States, cherish that very high, and we give very high medals and all kinds of awards that go with that. But man, I'm like, there's still valor in putting yourself up on the internet and showing some legit framework called Scrum, because people learn. So Noah, I thank you. You challenged me and my own interpretation of the Scrum framework. And listen, I do it. I have it in my life as well. I know you do, Jesse.
Oh yeah.
But I kind of questioned it. So I just wanted to start this out and say thank you, Noah. Of all the things that went down the last 2 weeks, that one for me stuck out the most.
That's the big one, huh? Well, that's a good one. Like, that's a really good one. Right, compared to all the other crap that's happening.
Jeez. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
I saw it come across my feed, and I just had to put it on the list, right? It's going to be one of those that I consume when I'm out getting my morning mileage.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Got to check it out. Definitely.
It's a good one.
Folks out there in the Omniverse, if you're out there, if you're listening, let us know where you're coming in from. And this is not our first collabo session. We've had, I don't even know how many we've had.
It's part 3 today's.
Yes, part 3. This is part 3 on the 5th discipline.
5th discipline. We are definitely not 3/5 of the way, let me tell you.
No. We got some ground to cover, man.
And now we're at chapter 4.
Yes, and on the last conversation, there was, I think you threw it out there and said, hey, you want me to make any references, 80s, 90s movies? And there were a bunch of recommendations. And so I think we're going to have some fun today. Yeah.
Yeah. I did some research into some 80s, and one movie was, it's a book that came out in 1985. It was actually released in 1990, but I'm saying they filmed it in the 80s.
Okay.
So I got 2 queued up. I got quotes. I got references. I broke down the scene.
Oh man.
This is going to be something. But I think the reason why I did it, because people can kind of relate. Fifth Discipline it's written by a PhD from Peter Senge. He's MIT. Like he's like Good Will Hunting style, like
right.
You speaking of, but we can relate this very simply to people like me who are just normal people who are interested in things, but also like, we got to challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
Right. You got to question it. So we're at chapter 4. Anything else you want to mention?
No, I just, there's a couple things that you touched on today that seem to be a theme in the conversations I've been having around status quo, challenging status quo, and just another layer deeper. So you can have a sense of where my brain is. Like, I think when we talk about challenging status quo, we're thinking about the status quo of an organization, of a business, of a team. I'm thinking of it more in terms of challenging my status quo, right? Like, another way it probably makes more better sense if you think about expanding comfort zones and how easy it is to, back to the courageous thing, right? They see us live streaming and people think that's a very brave or courageous act. And at some point it isn't, if you do it twice a week. And so my status quo, my comfort zone is in doing this. And like, I don't get to ride that horse forever. Eventually I need to stretch that comfort zone. And not just me, but I think it's something for most people to think about. So anyways, that's where my brain has been swimming. So,
but that's bravery, that's courage, because it's going to be tough. and you venture out. Jesse, you're such an inspiration to me. You're the reason why you see my face on the internet right now. So thank you.
Yes, it's my fault. I
and
love
voice. I was so inspired by you and Felipe. Speaking of Felipe, talking about PPC.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like in my shop working, like I was like, no, like I was like emotionally listening to a podcast. And now here I am. Speaking of reinforcing cycles, here we are. So
love it, man. That's the point. That's
before we dive back into the 11 laws, because I think we just brushed them. I don't want to go over every single one. If you want to go over all the 11 laws, go back to session 2. This is a sequential podcast. You can just press pause right now and go back. If you're live, well, strap in. Here we go.
Yeah.
I want to highlight a great piece of content. I already talked about Noah. And Noah, he's in 9th grade. He implemented Scrum into his life. Yeah, here I am. It took me 3 times as long. And we both share the same teacher, or at least same source code, and his father, Felipe.
Oh, yeah.
But so if you don't know what Scrum is, it's a project management framework that emphasizes teamwork and iterative development. Like it's teamwork, meaning like we need more than one person to do something. And it's iterative, meaning like you do things and they have to develop. Does that kind of sound like a construction project? Maybe, perhaps?
Like a ever rapidly evolving, changing environment? Yes.
So exactly, 100%. We all do fragments of Scrum anyways. We have to-do lists and those kind of things. The idea with Scrum is you combine it all together. You make it incredibly like adaptive, and you make it very visual. And the visual piece is like the whole reason why you do it, so people can see what's going on. And since it's iterative, like what's the next step, or what's the issue that we need to like iterate on.
Yep.
So it's both like influencing and informative in the same thing. That's why it's very agile that way. We don't need a information bulletin board and then also a schedule that we have to look at like this, right? That's not respecting people. It
doesn't help.
People work twice. So if you can combine those two things, your to-do list and like your schedule, into one framework, here's Scrum. Welcome. And you only have to figure it out. It already exists and it's free.
Yes.
You can implement it. Maybe you need some Post-it notes, but I bet those are already kicking around.
You got them there somewhere.
They're already probably kicking around. Anyways, so according to Noah, and this links up to 5th discipline very well, but Noah used Scrum to lead his Minecraft team to victory in national competition.
Nice.
I have a nephew who's into Minecraft, and he was showing me, this is a whole thing. I was
serious
like,
business.
I played Mario Brothers and Excite Bike, and I thought that was amazing. This Minecraft thing is like, there's a whole universe and nuances to it. And yes, it was Excite Bike. Remember, because you can like build your own course, right?
Yes.
So I was trying to link it too. So, but Scrum, it's versatile, meaning like it's very, very versatile. You can adapt it quickly to almost anything, every aspect of life, not just where it started from in software development, but he does it to his chores, to his academic tasks.
Yep.
2, it's easy and intuitive to learn.
Yes.
He learned it at age 4.
Yep.
Like, oh man. And he found it easy to grasp, and it's natural and intuitive. Like this suggests that some of the system thinking is natural. There are natural laws to systems thinking, and it's not overly complex because it follows general principles how we've learned. That's why a lot of these system thinkers are physicians or physicists or mathematicians or accountants or MIT professors, because they all kind of live in a world with a a lot of controls. Like there's a lot of things like they want to, if you're a physicist, you're trying to balance an equation or work out something like that, and you have to have proof. So it's that thinking. And then 3, Scrum is a game changer. It changes the game. It doesn't change the rules, it changes the game. So it doesn't just like propel you. We have this thing at DPR. It's like we have a mountain that we're climbing, and the path is slow, and there's ups and downs to climb this mountain. With Scrum, it's like you get a chairlift. Go. The hard part of the chairlift is building it, though, because you don't actually move anywhere.
Right.
But once the chairlift is installed,
you're gone. Go.
So it's leaps and bounds better than simple PDCA. So I just wanted to start with that. I know you didn't see it, so I won't belabor that point. But I said I pulled out the first quote, and I'll try to be brief here. He says the challenge, and they were talking about their Minecraft tournament. The challenge of round 2 is we had to build a settlement on Mars, and it had to fit with a green energy and how we get there and what it would be needed. Like they're freaking developing this like system that went on Mars. Like kidding me? Yeah. So we immediately went into research. First step is Scrum. Immediately research, not immediately doing. And it demonstrates how Noah was breaking down the task, a very complex task of building on Mars and using green energy. Both very novel things.
Right.
Green energy on Mars, like as novel as novel gets. Because a lot of the stuff that you have to do is interconnected, meaning like we have to research things and we have to understand things. And also he's working in a team. So you understand the importance of prioritizing tasks and then leveraging the people on his team's strengths. So it's like you're good at building the blocks. You're good at doing the layout. You're good at doing the detailing. You're good at like making the logic links, those kind of things.
Yep.
And the best part about what Noah did, and it was really small, but he called it Ninja Scrum.
Yeah.
Maybe he learned this from you, Jesse. This sounds like a Jesse thing. Ninja Scrum is when people do Scrum and they don't even know it.
Yeah, baby. Oh, yeah.
So, Noah, like, you were the highlight of the middle part of July in 2024 for me. So that's saying something. So thank you. So
yeah, well,
I like that a lot. What do you think there,
man? So 2 big things. One is you talked about how Scrum is intuitive. I agree, and I've also worked with teams that are experts at complicating the living crap out of anything, and I've working with that kind of, it's like, well, what if and what if and what if and what if and what if? Like, okay, write all of those down on sticky notes. Huh? Well, like, I don't know if we're ready yet. Like, we're ready right now. You got tasks to do, get them out of your head. Like, you want to figure out how to do this, get it out of your head. Let's look at them one at a time, limit the work in progress, address it, move it to done, pick the next one. Like, we can do this to your what ifs. And so my point is, like, I agree 100%. It is intuitive. And I also know that some people, and haven't given it enough thought to really evaluate what it is about some people that just have to complicate it. And so again, in those cases, it's like, okay, well, let's Scrum your what ifs. Because in my head, the way I deal with it is all those objections are you or that individual reconciling their current mode of operation and changing. And so if we like just talk about the things, it'll help them get there. And if we show them how to do that, it's not that hard, right? One piece at a time. The second thing that I love is the Ninja Scrum, right? Because another mistake that I've made as a lean freak and, with all the things is I'm so damn excited about the new tool system thinking, whatever it is, that when I'm introducing it to help people solve a problem, they don't give a shit about the history. They don't care about the origin. They don't care about the lineage of the coaches. They want their problem solved.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of going through the slide deck and showing them and like all the standards, and it's just start doing the thing with them. That is ninja style. Just start doing the thing, and maybe you have to break it apart and only use one element of it to solve a specific problem. And then before you know it, they're advocates of the damn thing because you took the ninja style. So that's what I got on that.
Yeah. So one cheat code to doing Ninja Scrum. You know the slide, you know this one. It's like what this is not, right?
Yep.
Like last planner is not.
Yeah.
Scrum is not like that. Graphic, never ever show that ever in the history of ever. Why? Because probably the things that people do are on that slide. And the second you show that, it's like it's got the circle with the slash through it, or it's got the thumbs down.
Yeah.
Because the second you show that, and it's like that's what I have value in that. I'm going to shut it down right now. So if you want to do effective implementation, everybody right now go out there and take whatever the subject matter is. It is not, because what you're trying to explain is we're going to do some adaptation and we're going to do some new things, but these new things, they're not invented out of thin air. They're invented out of improvement. That's all you got to say. And then it's like, hey, if we already do this, we're just gonna tweak it.
Yeah.
Tweak it. Yeah. So, and that's harder. I know it. I get it. And it's super easy to make hey, last planner is not a recovery tool. Yeah, I get it. Right. But people need recovery help. Yes, people need help. So
help them. Jeez.
Some people want a recovery tool. So Ninja Scrum. God dang it. I love that. I'm using that all the time now, because you don't even have to tell people you're about to do something. Just start doing it.
Yeah.
And you can implement and people get on board. And we're going to talk about those reinforcing cycles and how those cycles are so effective. So back to the book, chapter 4, rule 1. I didn't pick them all, but I picked on rule 1. And rule 1 is today's problems comes from yesterday's solutions.
Oh, baby.
The idea is very simple, yet is profound. The problems that we face today are unintended consequences of previous solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't know if you paid attention the last 2 weeks. This played true really, 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 really big way on news. All kinds of stuff. But I have a few examples, and then I'd like to get your feedback. But why this happens is we as human beings tend to focus on fixing the immediate visible problem without considering the wider issue.
Yes.
Right? This leads to the symptomatic solutions. Treating those symptomatic things have unintended consequences.
Yes.
And it happens in medicine, it happens in exercise, it happens in purchasing things.
Yes.
it happens. And every action within a system has ripple effects. Noah just proved that even him being interviewed, he didn't even put it out. Maybe he helped with the editing. I bet you he did. But Noah being interviewed at looked like a job site, and like teaching somebody, was like, this is really kind of inspirational to me. And now I'm going to teach what he taught me outward here in the southeast part of the United States. He's in California, right?
Yep.
Like that. And those unintended consequences, they're not always bad, right? They have good. But every action within a system has effects. They have ripple effects. You call them, right? You call those ripples of impact.
Yeah.
Here's rule number 1. You have to expect that there will be ripples. Short-term thinking. There's a book Daniel Kahneman wrote, really good one. Fast and slow thinking. This is the fast thinking, right? That we often prioritize quick fixes and immediate results, right?
Yes.
Like between the ages of 23 and 38, I gained almost 80 pounds.
Ooh, baby. Right? Yeah.
But that was over almost 20 years. But if I would have woke up when I was 24 and like, whoa, I gained all this weight, I would have immediately went to the doctor and said, there is something wrong with me.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But it didn't. Remember, we were talking about the boiled frog and one of these other things, but it was a very slow progression. It was about 2 to 3 pounds every year. And some years I would like gain 10 and then lose 5. So there's all this net. So my own personal short-term thinking, I overlooked the long-term impact of my own choices. And those were only mine. But it can lead to solutions that provide temporary relief, but can create big problems in the future.
Yes.
And then the last one, why this happens, is lack of feedback loops. So complex systems are full of feedback loops. And we can choose to see them or we can choose to ignore them.
Yep.
But they're always there. And where the effects of our actions come back to influence our system in unexpected ways. And without understanding these loops, our solutions can worsen an original problem. If you leave a wrench inside a piece of switchgear,
oh shoot! Oh God!
It could have serious unintended consequences. But the time in between leaving the wrench in there, like I was in there tightening the stuff, and I took a break and I walked away. And then us energizing that switchgear system, and that wrench in there was not designed to be in there. And they want electricity is a system, and it flows in very specific ways, except when there's something not designed in that system. So a complex system like a piece of switchgear is very complex. But if we don't understand, we need to have really good cleaning system and a validation system that says, hey, when we go in there, we got to check it back out. If we fail to do that even once, even if we're like tired, the consequences are huge. This is how we have fires, or this is how we have arc flashes, or this is how, even just that switchgear could be damaged. It could just have its own damage. And that thing is designed to damage itself before it has a bigger problem. This happens a lot. So our solutions, the short-term ones, could be worse than the original problem.
Yeah.
So that's why. Do you have any other ones?
The one that comes up is my substance abuse, right? Like my solution today's problems back in the day was to self-medicate. And that just had a compounding negative consequence into the future all the time. I mean, we'll just keep it easy and think about dehydration, hungover, poor sleep, poor nutrition, right? Like that had I could see it. And then like in terms of the feedback loop in that situation, and this is why like isolation for me is really dangerous, is because I severed all the feedback loops, right? And meaning the people that cared, I shouldn't even say severed, because they were still there. There were a lot of people that were still committed to supporting me and helping me grow, but I just kind of tuned out. Like they were on mute whenever they were talking about my drinking or my habits, self-destructive behavior. It just they went on mute. I didn't hear what they said and just kept doing what I was doing. And so that was the solution to some problems, right? To stress, to pressure, like all kinds of things that I was trying to deal with. But the today's problem came from yesterday's drinking.
Yeah,
So it just kind of kept getting better. And just like you said, like the weight loss, I mean, or the weight gain.
Yeah.
I know that every time that I got a promotion, when I went from installer to foreman, I gained 10 pounds. When I went from foreman to superintendent, 10 pounds, and then so on. And, you know, I started my business 2 years ago, and flying around in my private jet, Thomas, like I put on some weight, and I weighed in at the end of the year. Here's what happened. I was editing the videos of some online training that I put, the Field Leaders Planning Toolbox, some training for foremen on how to just do planning for the week. That's it. I was editing those videos, and I was like, oh my God, I put some major weight on, like, geez. That's okay. Let me go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I just gained weight.
No, the same thing. I would avoid being in pictures for that reason. Or like hide, like, we'd take like the group picture for the project, you know, I would stand way in the back. And so you could only maybe see like my face, but you couldn't see my body. And the reason why, because I was ashamed of it, but not like conscious until later. But when you're confronted with that photograph, you can't, I mean, you have to have serious like body dysmorphia.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you see it in video, oh man, even worse. So I'm still on my journey, but
nice.
Like you said, you would tune people out. So for me, it was very similar. It was the hiding. So like if I wanted to eat like bad food, it would be, and I'd drive to work, I'd have an hour solid by myself with nobody else in there with me. And the garbage can is on before the door, so you can dispose of the evidence.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any other feedback loop other than my own hiding. And my brain is a supercomputer. It's maybe not on the Peter Senge level, but it's still very dang powerful. And my short-term thinking can overcome like long-term effects real quick.
Super fast.
Yeah. So we talk about, and I want to talk about this more, but mental wellness and mental illness and mental injury, those are all very separate things. It's not mental health. That's like the spectrum. But having access to healthcare was not my problem.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Yep. It might be for some people, but not for me. They haven't completely had access to healthcare. So it's thinking about your feedback loops and then being conscious about them, I think, because humans are very complex, and we just talked about health and substance abuse and mental wellness, and those are all very complex and so complex subjects. We couldn't even try to scratch the surface here, but if we don't have feedback loops that are like really like honest and accurate and timely, our short-term thinking will overcome it all of the time.
Every time.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Next one. Do a little 80s adaptation here.
Come on.
The interconnectedness of systems. So there's a movie, it's called The Breakfast Club.
I think I've heard of it.
If you haven't seen it, there's a pivotal scene in that movie, and it's the detention dance scene. If you haven't seen the movie, it's a pivotal scene. It's a group of, there's got some teenage drug use. Just ignore that part. They're high schoolers, and they've been given detention, and they're serving their detention during I think it's probably a Saturday in the morning. So they call themselves the Breakfast Club, and they're given several days of it. And they're all, and this is why I want to link this to kind of a couple subjects, but it's kind of a band of misfits. And the reason why I like 80s types of music, there's 80s music in this scene, by the way, but 80s movies, because they show off this squad ideal. Like, you got to have a squad, and the best squads, they're different. They're different people. They're not exactly the same.
Yes.
And this squad, you have Brian Johnson. If you don't know Brian, it's Anthony Michael Hall, the Gary Wallace from Weird Science, the blonde-haired kid.
Yep.
He's kind of the dweeb, I guess. You have Claire Standish, Molly Ringwald, the princess, right?
Yes.
You have John Bender, who's played by Judd Nelson. He's like the criminal. He's the bad boy.
Yeah.
You got Andrew Clark. He's the jock.
Yep.
Emilio Estevez. You got Brian Johnson. I already talked about him. Allison Reynolds, basket case. She's kind of crazy. She's the right?
Neurotic. Yep.
Yes. And then you got Richard Vernon, who's the vice principal. Is Paul Gleason.
Yeah.
And then Carl Reed. Yeah. So like just some names here. Emilio Estevez would go on to star in a famous film called Mighty Ducks. But
yes.
But they're all very different. So they all bring different sets of perspective. And that's why it's a pivotal scene in this movie, because they finally come to see beyond their personal BS, their personal and they imbibe in a little get the it's not a liquid lunch, it's a smoked lunch, but or breakfast. But it represents a very structured setting. So they're in a school and they have rules, they're in detention and they're confined to their space, right? So Mr. Vernon, he's like the authority figure.
Yep.
Mr. Vernon leaves. He leaves the scene, and this scene, they now have kind of different social groups and social economic hierarchy, all the kind of things. And they're all in a confined space, and they have to interact with each other.
Yeah.
And they start to test boundaries, they express their individuality. And in this scene, Emilio Estevez breaks into the PA system and he starts playing music, and they're like dancing. Yep. So they all start dancing, and what it does, the physical act of dancing like breaks down people's egos, and then you start to show vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
That's why people don't like to dance.
Yeah.
So what happens is spontaneous dance breaks out, and no longer is there rules, right? Because everybody's got their own style, their own way of doing things, their own system. But the fact that they're all doing it creates a feedback loop, right? If one person was over there dancing, Molly Ringwald over there doing her princess dance, you'd be like, that's strange. But the fact that everybody is engaging in this behavior and doing it slightly different, it allows for system adaptation. So one, you have to create that feedback loop of, I'm going to dance. I don't care. I'm starting some music. Let's go. And then also, I'm going to approve Molly Ringwald, you dance. Or Allison Reynolds, do her 80s, like the goth girl dance.
Yeah.
I can't even explain it. You just got to watch the scene. But it allows for system adaptation. And then Mr. Vernon initially tries to suppress that behavior.
Yeah.
Right. But later in the movie, he can't even oppress the behavior. Right. Even if he's like, you want another day? You want another day? Right?
Yeah. They're like, whatever.
They don't care. Because it's like, we are now bonded. Right. So
right.
Like, even though everybody is from a different tribe or crew or clique or whatever it is, the detention dance scene transforms the students' relationships with each other and their perception of the system. It's like, we're not part of this social economic thing. Like, it doesn't matter if Emilio is the jock, right? It doesn't matter, because we're all in this together. We all have to serve detention together, so they bond on it. So I like that. And so that scene was really in-depth acknowledgement of a kind of a cheesy movie, but it shows that with feedback loops and adaptation, you can transform an entire system. And that's like the whole rest of the movie. That's why that scene is so pivotal. What do you think?
Yeah. So first, I want to shout out to Miss Maria. She says, "What's up from Alabama?
Bama.
Physical movement is excellent for tough topics."
Is it Roll Tide or War Eagle, Maria?
Oh, I
Or
don't
maybe
know.
I'm wrong.
Yeah, let us know, girl. No idea. I should know that. There's a few things in that, right? Like you said it. They bonded together through the dance. That doesn't mean every team needs to go out there and freaking dance together. The way what I recognize in that situation is that they were all doing something that wasn't entirely their strength. So, like you said, they all had to do some type of vulnerable step. Now, the important part is nobody told anybody you're doing it wrong. Because all it takes is one person in that situation.
No slide at the introduction of that scene that says, "This is how you do not 80s dance." Yes.
Right. And so because it was an improv, it was a yes and situation. Yes, you're dancing. I accept your style, and here's my style. And then that just reverberated through everybody else. And so they all they all demonstrated that they do have something in common. Even though all this other structure, like the system, we'll just say the high school situation, is really, really firm on us figuring out how everyone else is different. In this situation, they discovered, oh, we're not we're also the same. And they continued on. And then, so what happens after that? First, somebody had to be courageous and do the thing. Somebody else said, hey, I could do that too. It just looks different. Nobody said, no, that's wrong. So that momentum started building. They bonded because they had a shared experience. They did something vulnerable together. And then they were able to see beyond the system that somebody else designed to, right? Like somebody else designed this system. They were a part of it and didn't even know it. And through that experience, they said, wait a minute, we can do our own system. That's how all of that works out for me.
And even in the face of threat, right, of more detention, they were like, no, this is enjoyable. We'll have another and another. You want another?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So 80s.
Look at that. Maria said, watch your mouth. She's Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Yeah. So I work for almost the largest. We're the second largest general contractor in Alabama. So watch out. Watch out.
Watch out.
Watch out, Mrs. Lacey.
She spends a lot of time up there.
Yeah. Rule 2. Thank you, Maria. You're an inspiration as well. Harder you push, the harder the system pushes back.
Oh, I love this one so much.
I had to prepare myself there. Some box breathing. Let's analyze how the harder you push, the harder system pushes back.
Yes.
The students, we'll stick with the detention dance.
Okay.
Each with their own distinct personalities and backgrounds. They resist the rigid structure. They challenge Mr. Vernon's rules. They talk back to him, right?
Yep.
And guess what? You talk back to the authorities,
they come get you.
They don't say, yeah, that was a really good suggestion. Thank you for that. I'm going to take that into consideration. Matter of fact, why don't we all leave and we'll spend the rest of this morning in the weight room or something. I don't know.
Right.
No, instead, guess what? Authorities will double down.
Yep.
And Mr. Vernon responds. So you push against the system pushed back because the authorities, their entire job of any authority is to control the system.
and
That's the
maintain
job
the
of
status quo.
authority. Yes. So it's to regain. So if things are out of control, that they have that authority. This is very generic, by the way. Please do not use my words in out of context. But his actions, I'll stick with Mr. Vernon, represent the system pushing back against the students' initial push for autonomy and self-expression.
Yeah.
And so he's like, no, you're going to sit here in silence if you're going to push back, or we're going to have assigned seating. And so it escalates. So when there's a double down situation, the only thing, if you're on the receiving end of a doubling down situation, the only way you can counter that is by escalating it. So they continue to the kids continue to be more forceful, and Mr. Vernon continues to be more punitive, and they threaten them all with additional detention time, all that kind of stuff. And it exemplifies a system tendency to intensify pushback in response to any kind of threat.
Yeah.
So there's unintended consequences with that.
Yes.
And you see it in the scene. So that heavy-handed, that doubling down, that super authoritarian approach, I have to watch my words. Instead of quelling the rebellion, it fuels it.
Yes.
So the harder you push, the harder the system pushes back. So here's the thing about authority. It can't be everywhere at all times. And Mr. Vernon has to leave. And the system, during that moment of weakness, the system, the kids' system, it adapts.
Yep.
And they adapt to the system. Be like, okay, when he's in here, we'll act one way. When they're not, we'll act the other way. And then there's this emergence of a new order. The output of that is a new order. The students create their own dynamic. They create the dance system. They create short story sharing, right? They sit around, they tell stories. They form bonds. And it demonstrates when a system is pushed to its limits, the system can rise to new and unexpected patterns of behavior, but it's new and unexpected. So even if we're like, let's do roles and responsibilities, and then we'll hold people accountable to those, and the accountability piece will be through consequences, right? And how are we going to have consequences? We're going to have a compliance system. So someone's going to come out and audit. Yep. Right? I'm the director of quality, so I'm like chief auditor. Right? I should be, right?
Right.
But guess what? I do the systems thinking. So instead of coming out with my clipboard, I come out with GoPros.
Nice.
Right? I want to see the system, or I want to say, show me your drone video, those kind of things. And so what I'm trying to do is exactly that. So trying to see the unexpected patterns of behaviors. And once you understand what's unexpected, and be like, okay, let's roll with that. Or let's adjust from here instead of bad, do this.
Yes.
Because the second I leave, those bonds are formed and I'm not part of those bonds. So even if I say, hey, we're going to do laser scanning ahead of every concrete pour, but that laser scanning effort takes 6 hours, and the decision to do that is 20 minutes, right? And the time we have left to do the scan until the concrete covers it up, let's just go take some photographs and with some really right. So we have to adapt. That's what I'm trying to say. So the detention dance scene exemplifies that same behavior.
Yeah.
Is that the harder you push as an authoritarian or as a controlling contractor or whatever you want to call it, don't ever punch down. What do you got?
Man, so I love that you just said that. Don't ever punch down. I mean, again, I'm thinking on two planes, if you will. Like one, as an individual, and I always go to the individual, because where do you have the most control? Right here. And I don't even have very much control of that. And so when my we'll go back to the weight gain thing, right? I weighed in at 213 pounds, and I could have gotten upset, frustrated, and irritated about why my scale was reading the number it was reading, and bought a new one or whatever, without evaluating the system. Like, my point is, the system my system in terms of nutrition produced that precise outcome. And so fighting against that and not changing it is only going to make it harder. If I continue to eat the same amount of calories and continue to expend the same amount of calories, I'm only going to get heavier. And so the point is, the system that I'm living in, that we as individuals or the outcomes that we're experiencing, are a direct result of the system we're living in. And it's because it's perfectly designed to produce that outcome. If you want a different outcome, you got to tinker with the system. You got to make changes within the system. On the other side of that is like as a
ripple effect.
Right, as a the leader or the person with responsibility and authority. Same thing. If my people aren't, we'll use the psychological safety as an example. Me telling a group of people that the space is psychologically safe doesn't mean nothing. When people are guarded and people are backbiting and people are hiding problems, telling them to be psychologically safe doesn't make it happen. And chastising them for whatever that behavior is doesn't change the behavior. They are behaving precisely that way because the system reinforces that behavior. And so evaluate the system, tinker with the system so that you can have a different outcome, instead of just pushing harder, putting your foot on the gas on the thing. I mean, you already know, I know how to put my nose to the grindstone and make things happen, right? I know how to work hard. Sometimes I'll say this, most of the time, me taking a step back, pausing, gives me the vantage point to say, oh, wait a minute, what if I tweak this thing here? And let a cycle go by and say, oh, that worked. Okay, what if I tweak this? Instead of saying, okay, now I just need to go harder. I mean, I was just evaluating the LinkedIn newsletter that I do. And I'm like, man, it's kind of a pain in the butt. And I usually do them Sunday evening. And by the time I'm finishing it, it's like I'm on fumes, like, oh God, okay, I got to do this one more step. And like, oh, now I got to make the post and I got to write something witty or something that's going to interest people. And by that time, I'm like done, right, Jakes? Whatever, just do the post. So today I'm like, okay, this has happened multiple times. I can keep doing it this way and I'm going to have the same outcome. Maybe I need to look at it differently. So I wrote down, kind of scrummish, right? I said, what are all the steps that are required for me to produce that newsletter? And I was like, oh, there's 3 steps right here that I don't have to do sequentially. I could do these any time of the week before Sunday, so that I have energy to do the heavier thinking stuff in the writing and whatever. Change the system. That's the point, right? Instead of pushing harder against it and, taking a nap before I do it, or was like, no. Let me just tinker with the system. We'll see what that outcome is. That experiment still needs to be run, but it will for sure produce a different outcome.
Yes, I like it. A good example, if you're doing construction scrum, if you're actually doing it, when you move from doing into complete, you move through the framework, you take your task and you move it. What we did, what I like to do, and we've done this before, is there's 2 categories of done. There's done like well. These days I call it right the first time, but it's when you complete a task, you can do it. This was seems positive. And then there's another category. It's done, but it wasn't great. Like it's But the thing about Scrum is like move it from doing into done, and you're done. Like move on and don't linger on it. But if you actually place it into it could have been done later, when you do that retrospective, like you were talking about, you don't have to like go back and think about what were the things that were like. There's no surveys that have to go out. There's no like we have to gather up and like brainstorm on like what went well, what went like we don't even have to do plus delta. We have all of the deltas right here in our stack. So when we do that phase in retrospective at the end of a phase of work, ready to go, we don't even have to think about it. So when we want to talk about what things could have gone better, we just take that stack of done, could be better, and start breaking those down. Oh, that's such a useful one.
Yeah.
I'm scared to do it. I have one in my kitchen, and I only have the done column because I'm not in complete control. I'm scared, but maybe I need to implement some change. I think I will.
There you go.
But I think it's good advice, and it's hard to take as well. Which leads me to rule 5.
Ooh.
If you're ready, if you want to.
I'm ready.
The cure can be worse than the disease.
Ooh.
There's another movie. Remember, I said it was a book. Wise Guy. It was written in 1985.
Yep.
But it was a film adaptation. We all know a very famous movie called Goodfellas.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It won Academy Awards. I mean, come on, people. But there is a rule by Jimmy Conway, who's played by Robert De Niro. He says, "Never rat on your friends and always keep your mouth shut."
Yeah,
because the cure can be worse than the disease.
Yeah.
So if you're in jail, you can get out of jail quickly, but it won't help the organization. So in our world, what's the cure that's worse than disease? Sometimes.
Oh.
You hear me say it all the time. It's Hollywood metrics.
Yeah. Overtime, more people, more material. Go.
It's like this red line on our schedule. It just gives me anxiety. I keep staring at it because it's in bold and it's got a red line on it. Ugh, right?
Yep.
And what it leads to, I'm not saying CPM is bad. Some people say that. I think I use it all the time. It's not bad. Just it's part of the system. You just got to take it into consideration. But focusing on the wrong thing could be the cure that becomes worse, right? Because if you have something that's linked incorrectly, or you're not taking into consideration some broken part of the supply chain, and you're focusing solely hours on like encouraging workers to work late, even though if they accomplish that task, the task that follows hasn't even gone through manufacturing process. And how do we know? We don't know because we haven't asked a question. So if we focus on the wrong things, we might not be actually productive.
Yes.
And that's the cure that becomes worse. Unhealthy competition. And what I mean by that is we do this. We're trying to do this very subjectively these days at DPR, but it's comparing two projects.
Oh, yeah.
They're not the same. Even if they're like the scope is similar, the constraints are so much different. The local permitting process or the time or whatever it is. And what it does, it creates a culture of unhealthy competition.
Yep.
So unhealthy competition, it leads to burnout, leads to stress, it leads to like hoarding staff. Right. So if you're a foreman, this happens a lot because it's hard not to do. It's hard not to put people into boxes and then compare them against each other. I used to be forced ranked against my peers on a project. I'm not sure that company I used to work for still does that, but like when I found out about that, it changed my whole perspective. I'm like, I don't have to worry about producing the best that I can do. I just got to be better than that guy. Oh, watch me.
Done.
Right? Right. So
Yeah.
it leads to poor decision making and poor behavior. So if we're focusing on the wrong things, it doesn't help.
Yep.
And it leads to gaming the system.
Yes.
Right. Because as soon as you tell people how they're being measured, they're like, oh, how do we cheat this system?
Oh, dude.
Manipulating data. This is why I just want to be careful where you consume information. Like the sources of your information that you consume, and it doesn't matter. Take a variety of information.
Yes.
So if it's like those people over there, whatever this information system is wrong, just take a look at it.
Yes.
Because if you take a look at that, and then you take a look at your own the system that you that normally take information from, you can actually like come to some moderately scientific thought.
Yes.
So I think that leads to, if you start to see this gaming in the system, or saying that those people are the enemy, or whatever it is, and that they're manipulating facts and whatever that is, you lose trust.
Yep.
You lose trust, and once trust is lost, everything else doesn't matter.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's the cure. That becomes the disease. What do you think?
Man, while you were talking, you reminded me, there was this one situation I was in where the corporate goal was to improve productivity by 10%, right? Installation. And so they put together this competition. And so the competition, there was some parameters, right? You had to be managing 3,000 labor hours per month or 5,000 labor hours per week, something like that. And across the company, whoever had the lowest productivity or the best productivity, meaning, and it was simple math, right? It was number of hours, percent complete, gave you a 1.0, and that means you're making budget on your labor, right? Forgetting dollars, just labor hours, hour per hour. Anything under a 1 was you're making money. Anything over a 1, you're busting the budget. And so the idea was, over a quarter or whatever it was, the superintendents that had the best productivity ratio would get like a $500 or $5,000 check. I can't remember. And it was a big deal, right? Everybody was excited about it. The cure was, let's do this competition to improve production. What ended up happening, to your point exactly, people figured out you could game the system.
Ooh.
And so they started, going from 5% complete to 10% complete, like multiples of 5s and 10s early on in the project, early on in that whatever labor code it was. And so it showed 0.75, 0.6, 0.8, like they were killing it. They got their little bonus check. They got celebrated until they got to like 90%, percent complete.
Mm-hmm,
they weren't actually 90% installed. It was just playing with the math. All of a sudden, people started 90.1, 90.2, 90.3.
This was
and
only
so
plumbing, or was this all mechanical trade?
Plumbing, piping, and sheet metal.
Okay.
Right. And so I know, like, the actual math is, if I have 1,000 feet to install and I've installed 200 feet, I'm 20% complete, maybe a little less because it still needs to be inspected, right? What they were doing, I have 1,000 labor hours. I've spent 200 labor hours. I'm going to say I'm 25% complete. So their productivity ratio was just freaking math. And it caused once the numbers started showing itself on the second and third cycle of that, they said, okay, we're canceling this program, because people started gaming the system. The cure was worse than the disease.
Mm-hmm. And I love some mechanical trades. You guys do the impossible. Like, I walk by and be like, this is magic. I don't even know how this works. Like,
how are they
is a
going to
pump
do that?
involved? Like, what the heck is a heat exchanger? Like, this is kind of yeah. Anyways, but the thing about a mechanical system, it's not independent. It requires a structure to be placed correctly, by the way. Like if you have installing hangers and where you want to put a hanger, there's a piece of like a beam in the way.
Yep.
For the exterior wall system that you can't touch. Like it's the rule is you can modify the main structure, but you do not touch the backup system for it. Like, but those guys, they didn't look at the mechanical drawings. They just went ahead and just blasted it out. And they're way ahead of schedule. They're like getting high fives.
Yeah.
And it's like when you came out of the core and you did your main medium pressure loop, and it was like that's big work, right? Like because it's heavy. It's the big size system.
Yes.
There's equipment involved, right? Because you got maybe there's some crane time.
Yep.
But that last 10%, you need lights installed because your fixtures need to be aligned with like the fire alarm thing. Now all of a sudden the architect's out there being like, we need positive pressure in this. We screwed up the design, right? They're like, oh man, like we got to move like returns around, all kinds of stuff. Like, yeah, it's easy on your Revit file to just move the spots.
Yeah,
and dots.
but you go, man, T&B becomes a freaking disaster.
Yes, I'm within earshot of an architect, so I should watch myself.
Watch yourself.
But it's like those. Remember what I was saying last time? If it's easy to make the decision, you're probably creating some serious hard work on somebody else.
Yes.
And that links it in. So that last 10%, it really shows off the interconnectedness of systems. Because if you don't have permanent power brought into the building, that means the power company needed to give you the thumbs up, not you, Jesse, like the electrician. Right. And their entire system and that way they did it, make sure they didn't leave any wrenches in the switchgear.
Yep.
They pass all those inspections. Then we can bring on permanent power, and then we can bring it and give power to the fan unit that energizes the system so you can test it for leaks and stuff like that, or turn on the pump and put water on the system, those kind of things. And it's like all of a sudden we're not a completely alone trade. Not only do we need that system to work, but we need their help, and we need to know that they did their jobs well.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's like, oh my God. Like that is uncomfortable to think about in the moment. Yeah. When you're sitting at 90.2, right? Yeah. Those guys are morons. They're hosing me, or they changed the design. It's not my fault. Right. Yeah. So which leads me to rule 8. If you're ready. The mechanical trades. I have a very fond appreciation for that work. It is it's not celebrated because it's hidden behind walls and it's buried in the ground, those kind of things. But if that wasn't done well, it leads to all kinds of problems. So thank you everybody in that world, including the mechanical and electrical designers. But rule 8, you ready?
Come on.
You can have your cake and eat it too, but not all at once.
Oh, I like this one a lot.
Henry Hill, Goodfellas. He's the main character. Ray Liotta is played by. But Henry Hill, he's a gangster.
Yes.
But Henry Hill is also a family man.
Yes.
He's got 2 lives. The problem with being a gangster is you don't leave the life. It's blood in, blood out, right?
Yes,
maybe
sir.
You need to call your alter ego.
Mm-hmm.
But Henry Hill also wants the stability of a normal wife and children and home and living in the suburbs. But he can't indulge in both worlds. Seemingly, he can't have his cake and eat it too at the same time. And it all, Henry Hill, if you know the old Hank, it all crumbles apart in the end. And all the worlds collide. and throughout the movie, he's trying to navigate the balance, right? He tries to keep his family separate from his criminal activities. But ultimately, his wife gets involved as well. And then by including his wife into his criminal enterprise, it puts his entire family in danger, just in danger. And it serves, like Goodfellas, it serves as a cautionary tale. And everybody liked that. Everybody thought it was just a good Martin Scorsese gangster flick. And it definitely is a classic, but it shows system thinking and that you can't have your cake and eat it too at the same time or all at once.
Yes. Well, I'm wondering, I know we got, two things. I see Todd Wilson is out there in the Omniverse. And so is Adam Hoots. Appreciate you guys. And maybe let's kick the question to them. What do y'all think about the idea is you can have your cake and eat it too, but not at once? For me, that's kind of, not kind of, it's just the way this is my issue. I hear so many times, Jesse, you're never satisfied. You want too much. You can't have it all. I'm like, oh, yes, I can. Just not all right now. Like, you're right. I can't do all things right now. I can't have all the impact and whatever right now. But I can have it all. It's just going to be on a different time.
Can't have it all at once. Yes.
Not all at once, because, there's only so much. Rather, and I've done this before, right? Where I sacrifice exercise, sacrifice sleep, sacrifice relationships, sacrifice everything for the one, like to have this thing, and then everything falls apart, right? I shouldn't even say sacrifice, because I was neglecting all these things to try and have it all at once. And then, perfect example, going to have dinner with my family or my girlfriend, not that I have one, but in the past, and checking my emails and taking phone calls, right? Like, I'm here with you. But she's like, no, stupid, you're not here with me. Like, I'm trying to have it all at one time. Like, I can't do that. I got to be able to separate, focus on the one thing. And that's why for me in my brain, it's all about intensity, right? Like, when I give my personal relationships, my friends, work, clients, prospects, podcasts, all the crap that I do, when I give them the same amount or same measure of intensity, the outcomes are great. But I can't give that measure of intensity to all of them at the same time. This is why if you call me on the phone, I likely won't answer. This is why if I am talking to somebody, nothing else is going on. Nothing's going to take my attention, right? Because I can have all things, just not at the same time. And I think sometimes, rather, I'll say it this way, or I'll say like Todd Wilson says, what are you prepared to give to get cake? So it's an exchange, right? Like, what are we going to do so that you can get that? And I think that's 100% accurate. And I think a lot of us, kind of back to talking about mental health, mental wellness, and all these things, if we could come to terms with the idea or the fact or the law, was it the 8th law? If we could come to terms with the law that you can have your cake and eat it too, but not at once, stress would be a lot less punitive in our lives. That's what I think.
Yeah. It's very simple for me. I said this last time, in my world, I've said this so many times now. I worked in Las Vegas, where we worked on the Aria Hotel and then Cosmopolitan, just so people know what I worked on. But it was 3 shifts. There was 24 hours a day. There's no night noise permit you need on the Strip in Vegas. In fact, it's encouraged because it's so hot, especially right now, July, Nevada, toasty. So it's actually advantageous to work at night. Here's the thing. the construction management part of the work happens normal hours, right? 7 to 5 or whatever. But like if you're young Thomas up on the working deck, up on the 44th floor, trying to get his inspection signed off, like we start concrete pour at midnight. So it's like if you were there at 7 in the morning, you're there at midnight. How does that work? Like, how does that equate? Right? Guess what I did? I didn't work harder. I just slept less.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I took that, take a portion out of my life and took that swath out. And so the reinforcing effect was he gets after it. He's there at midnight. He's there at 7 a.m. He's getting stuff signed off or rolling. High five. Promote that guy. And that's what happened. And that's not to say that was bad. It's not.
Right.
I've learned so much from working there and the years following. And I like to go back and look up at the tower and point at it and be like, yeah, I was up there at like 2 in the morning one time.
I pulled an all-nighter there.
Yes. Oh, many times. And, so it all builds on itself. But there was a cost to that. And the cost to that was, listen, I didn't have many hobbies. I don't have tons of friends. I moved to 5 states in 10 years. Like I've jumped around all kinds of places, chasing that life. And that's the path that I chose. But there was a cost to it. And the cost I've already said, I have mental injury from the stress. And then I also had a bunch of outcomes. Since I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't hitting the gym, right? I wasn't training for a marathon. And when you don't work normal hours, the grocery store, I guess they're open 24 hours, but it's when you're tired, you don't go pick healthy choices at Whole Foods.
Hell no. Yeah,
you're gassing up on your way home. You get the bomb. You know what I'm talking about? The burrito. Yeah. I think they still make it. And because it's easy.
Yes.
And the choice that you make, the difficult choice is, I've already made it. I'm going to go home and go to bed. The easy choice is the unhealthy dinner. And those things have consequences. So you can't have it all. You have to design your life. And the thing I wanted to tell people is that you can't have your cake and eat it too. So if you want to work crazy hours and get after it and get ahead, there's a consequence. And that consequence will come from your personal life, from your children, and your education, and whatever else, whatever else you're interested in, you have to trade it off.
Yes.
You can't have it all. You can't have it all. Once you come to that realization, you can start to make different choices. Yes.
Yep.
And you can go to places where having a personal life is valued, and you just have to find your niche. Yes. So thank you for sharing that. I wanted to tell that as well, that this is a very real thing, and that's my story is only mine. It's not a cautionary tale.
Right.
I do very, very well now, but
right.
It's and it leads to rule 11. Are you ready?
Well, before we go there.
Okay.
I want to make one point and give some shout outs. So I'll start with the shout out first. This cake idea really got some people excited.
Everybody likes cake. Again, we're talking about some
why
delicious
would I have
food.
Cake if I couldn't eat it. And then Adam says, well, he's got the solve. We only need the cake we can eat right now, just in time delivery.
Yeah.
Gotta limit the cake in process.
Yes.
We're talking about some cake here.
Yeah, whenever I had my birthday, I would take the rest of the cake to the trailer, and by 9:30 in the morning, it's gone.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. Everybody's walks in the trailer in the morning, it's like jackpot.
Yeah.
Hey, that was for lunch. Yeah, no, it's gone. It's because the easy choice makes it difficult. What do you got?
Yeah, the point I want to make is, and you said it, but I just want to double down on it so people don't miss it. We have to be aware that the choices we make are the second and third order consequences of it, right? if you want to be dedicated and like Wilson says, he's worked all of those shifts, right? I'm pretty sure a bunch of people that are listening to this has had, the 12, 24-hour shifts, worked days and days and days on end without any vacation, or I'll say years without vacation. And, there was a time in my life where that's how I functioned. And I was irritated that like the romantic bucket wasn't really working out. It was always a pain, right? It was always issues, stress coming from it. What I didn't do back then was take ownership of the fact that, well, I'm making decisions that aren't great for that romantic stuff. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, if I'm going to continue to live this way and operate this way, I need to know that romantic stuff is just going to be a stressor, because I don't want to change my mode of operation. And so, if you want to work in advance, and like, if you like for real, if you want to advance within the company real fast, you put in the hours, you make stuff happen. And if you have family, if you have kids, you need to, like, I'm going to say it this way. You need to own that you're choosing not to spend time with those people that you love. The company's not making you do it. You decided to do it. And like Todd Wilson says, you are not a construction machine, right? Like, even machines need downtime. And so just don't be naive. Don't say you're doing it for your family.
Yeah.
You know what? If your family had a say, they would have more time with you. This is all about you.
Yes.
Know what decisions you're making. Yes. Own the damn thing and keep on going.
Really good podcast you just did with Harold McDowell.
Oh, yes. My former boss. CEO,
I want to plug that. Everybody, don't listen to this tomorrow. Go listen to the Harold McDowell. He's a former CEO of TD Industries, right? Just recently retired. Basically everything we just talked about, he lived it.
Yep.
And so Noah was my first highest influence in the last 2 weeks. Mr. McDowell, thank you for sharing your story, because also very inspiring. And also like if we talk about pillars of our industry, and like Harold tell the story about what was it? He was it him that went and sat in Trammell Crow's office?
Or no, that was Ben Houston. That was Ben Houston, another one of the former officers. Yeah. What do you think about that?
When I almost had to pull over and be like, damn, because that would be Trammell Crow is like is very talk about like the pillar of like land development, like an icon, like a real estate icon. Trammell Crow is that. They're still around, by the way. We work with them.
Oh yeah.
But like having the talk about bravery to just be like, hey, I got an issue with you. I'm gonna go sit at your office and wait till you show up.
Yep.
Like, dude, that's probably your most prized client, especially that's probably in Dallas, I imagine.
Yeah, it was in Dallas.
Yeah, like, and to call people out and talk about like, how do you learn the system rapidly? Go pull a stunt like that. And it's a great story. There's also a ton of stories like that sprinkled in there, but like these are pillars of our industry. So that was a great example of that. So should we do this is the last rule.
Come on.
But it's rule 11.
Rule 11.
There is no blame.
Oh, there is no blame. Tell me more about that, Thomas, please, because that is like...
This is the extreme ownership part of the discussion.
Good.
There
is no blame. So I like the Joe Pesci character in Goodfellas. It's like, funny how? Like, I'm a clown. I amuse you. I make you laugh. I'm here to amuse you. What do you mean funny? Funny how? Am I funny? Like, the scene? They're at I think they're at a restaurant.
Yes.
And this shows there is no blame in this scene because the interconnectedness means Tommy's anger, Tommy DeVito, he's played by Joe Pesci.
Yep.
He stems from feeling disrespected. He's like, wait a second. Henry Hill is mocking me?
Yeah.
So in a systems thinking perspective, it simply isn't an isolated incident. There's no blame. Like, it's not the single time that Henry Hill is mocking Joe Pesci or, Tommy DeVito. So it creates a circular causality.
Ooh.
So there is no blame. This is a continuum.
Yep.
And so what happens in this scene, and probably I imagine what happened with Trammell Crow, was the outburst escalates the tension, right?
Yep.
Like, If you didn't have the detention dance scene or whatever it is, the circular causality, you don't spin the wheel, right?
Right.
So you lead to the cycle of escalating consequences. And he says, Henry Hill's like, man, you're funny, and like Tommy DeVito's like, funny how? How am I funny? Right? Like he's trying to understand, but not really. So what he's doing is shifting the focus from blame to understanding. Remember how there's no blame?
Yeah.
So Tommy DeVito saying, how am I funny?
Yeah.
Hank.
You understand.
Instead of assigning blame to Henry, he's provoking him. He's provoking Tommy, by the way.
Yep.
The system thinking would be like, it encouraged us to examine the underlying patterns of behavior. Now, Tommy DeVito is a psychopathic sociopath.
Yes.
You need to watch the movie if you don't know how to do it. Joe Pesci won it. He won an Oscar for this scene, by the way.
Yes.
But what are the unspoken rules and expectations of this social group? There's a hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, this is organized crime. But Tommy DeVito, in this case, the mafia culture, with its emphasis on respect and power dynamics, plays a significant role in shaping how conflicts are perceived and expressed. Funny, like I amuse you, right?
Yep.
And it creates conflict. But that's the thing about there is no blame. It's just whatever the thing that pushes people to the limit or makes people move, like quit the job or quit the company or move to another project or say I want to be reassigned, or like people do poor craftsmanship, right? There's no blame for that. They're not lazy,
right?
There is no blame. It's just like all of the stuff converges together and it just leads to that singular outcome. Like leaving a wrench in a switchgear, it wasn't because the electrician was lazy, it was because he was tired. And why was he tired? Because he worked 10-hour shifts for the last 2 months.
Yep.
Or we didn't have a checklist to go back through and say, hey, did you look inside the gear and make sure that it's clean?
Yep.
And put a flashlight in there? The responsibility within the system, it's the system that's to blame.
Yes.
And it's hard to recognize that, and I get it, but I like that scene because it pushes that issue that it's not that Henry Hill says that Tommy DeVito is funny. Henry Hill is saying you're a psychopath because he was telling a story of him being beat up by the police. Right. Yeah. But that provoked Tommy DeVito to escalate the conflict and pulled out a weapon, I think, in the scene. But it was in good fun, obviously. But even in those situations, you can see, and I always say this, like in the face of conflict, and now that Adam Hoots is on here, he's a big proponent of culture, right?
Yep. His favorite is thing.
Yes, his number one thing is culture. But I would say this: in the face of conflict, your true colors are seen, are shown. Yes. And whenever there's conflict, at that very second, the next thing that happens, that's the people's true character.
Yep.
And we talk about bravery in that. So if you're not brave, you won't take brave steps. If you are brave, you do take brave steps. So I think I wanted to say that. So what do you think about Rule 11.
Oh man,
There is
there's
no
a
blame.
bunch there. So
There's so many.
there's a lot. I mean, in terms of, there's just so much goodness there. So in terms of like extreme ownership, on that line of thinking, there's discipline. And so like the discipline it takes to evaluate the system and not blame the people is huge. Like I would say it's kind of a super or Herculean feat for people to transition from blaming people to evaluating the system. I'll give you one example. One of the leaders I was working with, amazing. We went through, I got to tinker with their brains on fact-based problem solving. And anyways, we went through the whole thing. Later on, we're talking about, we're having like a debrief with the group. And he's like, Jess, that A3 stuff that you taught me, I used to. I'm like, oh, awesome. Tell me. He's like, they had a situation on a project where something really bad happened, that he found out about it from the adjuster. This was a VP. The VP found out about this liability issue claim from the adjuster, not internally through the organization, through his, the line, the chain of command. I'm like, oh God, okay. Tell me more. He's like, well, I wanted to call everybody on down the line to the field engineer and the APM and assistant superintendent and cuss them out and tell them that they failed because they should have called me and told me. I said, well, yeah. I said, okay, what'd you do? He said, well, I applied your system idea. Let me go evaluate the system. He said, and I found in our process, like in the training curriculum, it does not say call X person internally and call the adjuster or whatever the situation was. He's like, they just made the right decision, like the best decision they could given the information they had at hand. And I was like jumping for joy, because he knows like all the damage that he didn't cause, like the spending all the social capital he would have by jumping down people's throats. He exercised discipline to go and evaluate the system and really research and find and fix it so that it doesn't happen again. That is tremendous, immense discipline. And to your point, he was under pressure, in conflict, for the rest of the organization to say, what the hell, why don't your team don't know what to do? Like, how does this happen? And he still carried that, went and did the research and found the break in the system and made a change to make it better.
Wow.
Right. Like, I mean, I get to work with some amazing freaking people. That's number one.
Sign me up.
Dude, they're awesome. That group of leaders, and I can't say their name, I wish I could. Yes, they, like Maria says, they do demonstrate radical empathy, compassion, and grace. And yes, it is the way, and extremely difficult when the sky is falling down.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say is the reason we are so quick to blame is because it's easy. It's back to that quick thinking, slow thinking, right? It's so easy. Like when I don't have the capacity or bandwidth to understand somebody, the easy thing is to judge them, right? If I can't understand, it's easier to judge, and I am absolved of all responsibility. When I can't evaluate a situation or understand that it's part of, like, the outcome is the result of the system, I can blame the trade, I can blame pre-con, I can blame procurement, I can blame the owner for not wanting to pay a premium. I can blame everybody. And then I'm absolved of all responsibility of improving the situation going forward. And so I think what I'm saying is I understand why blaming is so prevalent, but it's just lazy. Like, it's just lazy. And
Easy.
I'm grateful for the leaders like you and other people that are on the call today that do put in some effort to take responsibility and understand what the hell's going on before they point the finger.
Even Noah, engineer Manriquez, it's probably 15, maybe.
Yep.
About to get his license. But like having this mindset is not, you don't need years and years and years. You can learn this very quickly. Yeah. In fact, having years and years of experience might even be a deterrent.
Might be bad.
Because of rule 1, right? Like yesterday's solution caused today's problems. Thomas didn't wake up with high blood pressure and poor, blood levels overnight, right? If that happened overnight, I would go and check into the
immediately
emergency room, be like, this is an acute situation.
Yes.
Instead, I was the frog that got boiled.
Yeah.
And they're like, Thomas, what did you do? Did you get on keto or what? I'm like, no. Guess what I did? Step on the scale every day. And I take all kinds of like readings, like my heart rate. I get my blood pressure taken regularly now. And the reason why I do that is to overcome my system, like short-term thinking.
Yep.
Including like I'm not in complete control of this journey. Like I have to get help. I have to get medical help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And along the way, maybe there's medicine that I got to take along the way for a while. Maybe there's techniques, breathing, exercises, certain diets for sure, right? But it's really hard to do on your own. And also, this is like the thing about like, why is this so hard for everybody? Because it's really hard.
That's why.
It's so hard. And it's like, what's easy? Shift the blame. Like, oh, I got this job. It just nails me. I can't get to the gym because I got to get up at 4 a.m. Like, I look at Jocko's Facebook page with his watch and it's like, he's working out at 4 a.m. 4 a.m. I was on the road, bro.
Yep.
Right? Like,
yep.
You ain't bragging. So it's you have to understand the system and design your own. And if the design of your system doesn't include whatever the priority of the thing that you're doing, then you have to change gears or move on. And that's really scary. But time and time again, we hear it in your book. It's a whole testament to that. But your journey was very inspiring, and it's because of the steps that you took, and that wasn't easy. But the journey, like if you look back, was better. Like this is all positive. Like you had friends, and you made allies, and you started a business, and you shifted your blame. And there is no blame anymore. Like I gotta take ownership of this, but I can't do this on my own. I need help. And you started to design your system. I'm just trying to paraphrase your book, but it's very inspiring. And that's what I'm trying to say to people out there is you got to design the system. So that's the 11th rule. I want to get into chapter 5 because it's like, to this point, it's like, this is all really good stuff. You're just like reading good points out of a book, Thomas. Like this is so easy. It's like, this is the easy part. Like up to chapter 5, it's a shift of the mind. And like you have to do this. And so chapter 5 is like the reason why the first chapters are like, it kind of opens your eyes. It kind of says shift your focus. The system is responsible. You're just part of a system. You're not the main character, right? We're just part of an interconnected world. And so chapter 5, I like this book, but it introduces kind of 6 things. I'll kind of paraphrase them here. But the first one is feedback loops. where actions have within a system have both immediate and delayed effects.
Mhm.
So I'm hopefully by the end of we got about 20 minutes here. I want to give some pointers on how to draw a reinforcing cycle or how to draw a cycle.
Yes.
So I wrote down some steps. So the feedback loops. So Peter Senge distinguishes reinforcing feedback loops where actions amplify results and balancing feedback loops. You have the reinforcing loops and then you have balancing, which is the reverse. It's the counteracting thing.
Yep.
You have to understand both. 2, delays. Ooh.
What?
It's not a 4-letter word, but it should be. Delays. Delays. Peter Senge emphasizes the rule of delays in systems because of the rule of the distance between effect and cause. Right? They're not the same in time and space. So effects and actions may not be immediately apparent. This is like investing in the stock market.
Yep.
This can lead to misinterpreting cause and effect relationships and making ineffective decisions. Chapter 5 also talks about dynamic complexity because we live in a world that moves forward. The only thing that's constant is that the earth will spin.
Yep.
So that also leads to dynamic complexity because things are moving and things develop. And if you have cause and effects cycles on a timeline, it's not a perfect circle. Like you draw it like a circle, but there's also that x axis if you think of x in the axis of time. So it's more like a spiral or like a slinky getting stretched out.
Yes. I like Slinky's a good
There
example.
you go. Slinky. I love me some slinkies. I use them a lot. Seeing in a relationship, not things. So there's a takeaway here. It says system thinking involves shifting your mind from seeing interrelationships in like a parapet wall. And a parapet wall is where the exterior of a building meets a roof. Usually there's a little projected wall that goes above it, and that helps contain the water, the rainwater. And it also has an architectural feature to it, makes the building look taller. That detail, we always do bad.
Yeah. Yep.
Don't argue with me on this point. I have the stats. I have access to thousands of projects and have worked on many projects for many companies. And that detail is tricky. Why? Because the interconnected relationships of things.
Yes.
But if you see things for just things, like this is a roof system, this is a metal panel, this is a vapor barrier, this is gypsum board, you won't see the interconnection of it. And if you just look at the detail, you can't see it. It's hard. You need all kinds of steps. Next session, maybe I'll bring some visual aids. I have a really good work what do you want to call it? A workshop.
Yeah.
That I do in our company. And then there's also Brian over at Field Verified does this as well.
Yep.
They're very similar. I met Brian in Arizona. I think you were there.
Yep.
And I told him, like, he was showing me like his thing, and I was like, I've been doing this for years. This is freaking awesome. So seeing, which leads me to the next piece, is seeing patterns of change and not static snapshots. The reason why we do logistics plans is because the drawings, like the drawings themselves, shows the thing as done. Right? Like your landscaping plan shows all the plants already installed.
Yep.
And your structural drawings shows the structure all complete and tied in, welded out, right? So you have to see patterns of change. And how do you do that? You have to draw them. And I'm talking about a construction process, but like if I want to lose some weight, I have to see that. I have to understand myself at 280. I have to understand myself at 265. I have to understand myself, right? And I'm like, I also have to understand that as I get healthier and more Like I can do more workout. My workouts get longer or change, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
like what worked initially for me was just not eating candy bars. And that was like 10 pounds. Like just cut out the candy bars. Damn. I was just gonna do this forever, and I've like unlocked the cheat code. Like, no, that worked for 10 pounds.
Yeah.
So, or the cake, right?
The cake.
But you have to see the patterns of change, not just the static snapshots. And the reason why I said this before, but you overcome your short-term thinking that way.
Yeah.
And so I picked this picture, and this is not even my company. This is Suffolk. And this is a really well executed sidewalk enclosure. And we designed this system that's behind me. If you're listening to a podcast, I'm sorry. But you design this system for not the construction project. You design it for pedestrians walking by. So you notice the signage?
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's like pedestrians, you go walk this way and say, hey, don't walk in here. And this is gate A, right? There's this information thing. This is a really good example, Suffolk. Thank you for putting this on the web. But also, like, you have to take into consideration like heights of things, and also considering the perimeter of the building and the sidewalk and how people move. And like, this is designed, but this isn't going to be this corner of this building forever.
Right.
This corner of the building forever will look like a normal sidewalk with the building on it. But at this point in time, this sidewalk enclosure protects people from walking under probably a tower crane that's above it. You can kind of see one right here.
Oh, yeah.
But that's in another project. But we have to see the patterns of change and anticipate it. Otherwise, we will have unintended consequences. People will walk into the job site. I worked in Las Vegas. We had very similar pedestrian. We just finished a project on Broadway in Nashville. Very similar. Like you have to take into consideration, hey, people will walk past this job site, and we have to control them, but also like not freak them out. Like give them information to tell them where to go, so they know where to go, and the traffic will flow accordingly. So I wanted to say this chapter 5 recognizes that you have to see patterns of change. And the last one is mental models. We talked about this before, but Peter Senge highlights the role of mental models in understanding. Like, so you have to understand we are human beings. We're highly biased. We freak out. We get hungry. We get tired. Right? Like we can have a 25-part pre-pour inspection plan, but if that 25 part happens at 3:30 in the morning on the 44th floor where it's windy and possibly raining or cold, right? No one's going to bring a clipboard out there because it'll blow away. Right? So like just having like more rules and governance, and it won't help you. So you have to understand mental models. And even though like the freaking Dusty the robot is slick, like, oh, we love it. We own the patent, by the way.
Oh, nice.
But like it doesn't work everywhere. It doesn't work on dirt. It doesn't work on the ceiling. That device, while good, doesn't work everywhere. So like we have to understand, hey, we can't be completely obsessed with robotic layout. We still have to like do good with a plumb bob. Yeah. What do you got?
Yes.
I'll leave you. I don't know how much you like chapter 5, but it's like it unlocks the 4th chapters ahead of it.
Yeah. So the 2 points I love the most, I like all of them, but the feedback loops, especially like the balancing part. I don't know if you've read The Dance of Change. Super good, like illustrations and all kinds of really good stuff. I think I got a copy. Adam did like a systems thinking workshop webinar thing, and Hal Maycomer and George, they were talking about it. So I went and bought the book. I'm like, oh my God, yes. Totally helped me understand why I had so much struggle with certain feedback loops. Now, the reason I'm really excited about it is because you're not going to remember everything, But the key takeaway, I think, that I want to hammer when we come back next time is that you can and should design your own feedback loops. It is 100% possible in any situation. The second point that I really love is the mental models thing, because I know 100. You referenced the book, Becoming the Promise You're Intended to Be. There are models like in the book. I wasn't thinking about it when I wrote it that way. But the things that like I'm saying, hey, this is what I did. This is how it changed. This is how I think now. Those are models that I go back to all the time because they're a framework for me to make decisions. Now, there's one mental model that hopefully on the next live stream, people will be able to help us figure out, or at least help me figure out. And it's around confusing making a decision or confusing the making of a decision with having solved the problem. Those are two entirely different things. And I see it so many times. Somebody made a decision and problem solved. It's not solved yet. All you did was make a decision. But I think we have this something in ourselves. Maybe it's the lack of feedback loops. Maybe it's the lack of systems thinking. All we did was make a decision. You still got to do the DCA part to vet whether that decision solved the problem.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So,
and it's not decent, abandon. Yes. It's check and adjust. And remember, we started this, if you remember, we started the podcast. Going from plan to do takes courage. It's like dancing in a library in high school.
Yes. Look at that.
It's
Adam.
because you get all kinds. Yeah, okay. Round two, bro. Adam, by the way, one regret I have is we just missed each other at DPR. Man, so close. But we'll talk about ripples of impact. Your fingerprints are still around, by the way, bro. I want to say thank you. But the fact that I can do a systems thinking workshop in Carolinas, plural, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, is because the people who came before me who introduced the subject saying, yeah, this is a good idea. Let's keep rolling with that. So thank you. That's why we need to do round two, because we need to keep doing it. Yep. But the Dance of Change, I like that book because it's the follow-up to Fifth Discipline.
Is it?
Yes. It's Peter
Cini.
I
didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. I haven't I didn't have my notes queued up.
Nice.
But it does. It's the follow-up, so it's written probably in the 90s or something. But yeah, the Dance of Change. It's but I like about the dance though. It's kind of like the follow-up to Extreme Ownership. It's the what is the follow-up? It's the
Dichotomy of Leadership.
Dichotomy of Leadership. Thank you.
Yep.
The Green Book.
Yep.
But it's the same thing. It's like once you have this mindset, you get conflict.
Oh, baby.
Right?
Yes.
People, this is why lots of lean consultants are third parties. Because if you did it in an organization, you'd probably get fired. Or seriously challenged, because and I used to say this all the time when I did that role, was you get close to a core issue, people get violent.
Yeah, the claws come out.
And maybe not physically violent, but they'll push away.
Yep.
And my failing as a lean manager was oh, you want to get violent? Okay, let's get a little closer. Let me get out the GoPros. And that's not the right answer. I had to learn that the hard way.
Yep.
And the reason why is because of the Dance of Change that introduces it, or the Dichotomy of Leadership. It's that you have to understand the mood and the mental models, right? So you have to
Yes.
adjust.
Yes.
It's not a 1-to-1. Yeah. Here we go. So I like that book as well. Maybe we have to do a round 2 with The Dance of Change.
The Change. Solid book. It's really good.
But we got I want to wrap this up because I wanted to give people some kind of tangible takeaways.
Yeah.
So chapter 5, it introduces how to read a systems diagram.
Oh.
And it's not as straightforward as you think. I used to think this, but I was like, well, we just had a systems diagram. We can just, draw our evaporating clouds and our right cause and effect trees. Or if you've been to a Toyota facility, they have a Gemba studio or right
Obeya room. Yep.
or Obeya room, yes. Right. So we can just visualize this stuff, but to visualize super complex subjects, you would need like an IMAX theater.
Yes.
You need, speaking of Las Vegas, you need the sphere.
That's what I was just going to say.
Visualize.
It's got to be like a globe because all the interconnectivity is so freaking layered.
It is. It's nuanced.
Yep.
And even Dr. Goldratt said that. It's like you have to, the reason why you don't have to model the entire system is because you just have to find the constraint. And how you find the constraint, it freaking looks tired. It's Herbie, right?
It's Herbie.
If you go on a job site, like how do you know where the problem is? Just listen. You can see people complaining, or like you see trash laying around.
Yep.
Super efficient work areas. They're not messy. They don't have graffiti. They don't right. They don't break down because attention is given to it.
Yes.
So a systems diagram, how do you read one? I wanted to give some tidbits and then we'll kind of wrap this up here. So the key to seeing a systems diagram is to seeing circles. So if you see things in straight lines like graphs, like you have the x-axis represents time and a y-axis represents money or something else, production, something else. It's not that simple. Because why? Because you don't see all the influence. So the circles, the circular nature represents the influence. So that's the reason why they're not straight lines on a systems diagram, is because it's about seeing how different parts of the system interacts with each other in loops.
Yes.
So you remember I said you have a balancing loop, which is in reverse, kind of like if the reinforcing loop is what you want, the balancing loop is what you don't want.
Yes.
And you have to kind of
for both.
Yeah. That's why, like the Apple Watch, like fitness thing, it doesn't show because it can't record the stuff you stuff in your mouth, like the food.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it like your loops on your Apple Watch or whatever watch device that you use, it only shows what it records. It doesn't show what it can't record. It can't record. Right now, it can't record everything. It can't record your intake of calories just for one. So you have to input it in it. So that the balancing loop in your Apple Watch is you have to like type in all your calories. So to do that, you have to like record it. I mean, who actually does that? Like besides like Olympic athletes?
Yeah.
Very few.
Man,
I would even challenge Olympic athletes have somebody doing it for them.
They have they have a dietitian feeding them the right stuff. They don't even have to think about it, and that's what I need. It's
really hard
in my life.
But that's exactly it, because your balancing loop in just what you eat is hard.
Yep.
Because it's very fleeting. It's like I just had a handful of almonds. It didn't count, right? So
that was healthy.
It's not. It was healthy. But it's not as simple as cause and effect change, is what I'm trying to say. So,
Yes.
And then here's the thing about your feedback loops. It tells a story.
Yes.
So if you have a feedback loop on your system drawing, you should have an explanation of that loop. It should tell you something. And it helps you understand a pattern. So if you have a reinforcing loop and a balancing loop, they should both tell stories. Be like, this is what we wanted to do. This is what we're going to, then blah, 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 blah. So that each one of your circles should tell a story.
Yep.
When you're analyzing the system, you start with the decision.
Ooh.
So if you're like, where do we start drawing our system diagram? You start by, we decided to do X, right? It's like, we need to hire a superintendent, right?
Yeah.
Right? So we start to get into our reinforcing loops. We started getting our feedback loops. We started putting stuff on LinkedIn. We started to post it on our website. We started calling people we know, right? And then the feedback loops, or like we would start to get stuff back. People email us back. Right? They're like complaining why it's taking so long. Why aren't you hiring me? Right?
I have to do interviews.
Yeah. Why do I have to like take my resume and then put it into your system? Like, can't you just read my resume? Right? So
Yes.
you have to start with the decision, what I'm trying to say. And that from there, you can start to see your patterns. And then you can follow those patterns to the chain of events.
Yeah.
But like, where do you start? You start at your decision. Want to lose weight? You can say, I want to lose weight. I want to stop drinking. Whatever it is, right?
Yep.
So that one is hard because it's like, oh, I gotta write down my decision. And if I live in a world where my short-term thinking overcomes my decision making, I probably won't write down the right decision. So the cheat code is you write your decision down and you show it to somebody else.
Ooh,
that's scary.
Yes.
But for me in my weight loss journey, I had to say, go to a doctor and say, I need help. And this is where I want to be. And guess what? The doctor, generally speaking, won't be like, that's a terrible idea. Right?
Yeah.
They'll almost fall out of their chair and be like, we'll take blood work. We will, right? We will check in every 2 weeks, whatever it is. We got telephones with nowadays. There's web portals. You can just type it in. Right.
Yep.
So, but you have to take that step. And that step is sometimes scary. I want to say that where we talk about like, where do you meet conflict? Boom, right here.
Yep.
You meet conflict at your decision. This is why staffing is so important for a construction project, because that decision has consequences.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So that staffing process, that's why it's so like the core group of the core group of the core group, because it's very protected, because there's consequences of that. So you have to start with that step. Next thing in your drawing, your diagram, causality. It's complex. The idea that one thing simply causes another, oversimplification.
Yes.
And systems, cause and effect are intertwined. So that means like you might have a system like loop, and then over here you might have another loop that spins off of it. This is why if you go to chapter 5 in this book, you'll see systems diagram that have like parent-child loops. And that's the reason why, is because you have to be like, well, we went over here and we're like part of this system, we had to study it. And this system over here was like, we had the trial period, and you have to, the causality is very complex, and drawing a very complex system. Remember, it was like the Vegas sphere is not enough space.
Right. And we see and think in 2D, but these systems function in 3D, and we can't, like, that's
4D, because you forget
4D.
time.
Yes, time. Yes.
Yeah. So remember, we don't have an axis for time in our loop diagram. So you got to kind of scale that. It's hard. So it's really hard to diagram, but I want to say that causality is very complex. And then the next kind of takeaway is we're not just actors. I might be the main character in my system diagram. But I am just part of the world that's surrounding me. And we're influenced by the system that we're part of.
Yes.
No one individual is unique, no matter who you are. And don't believe me, try to buy time. Elon Musk, the Pope, the Dalai Lama, the president can't buy time. Time is fixed. It is not a commodity that can be traded. It's fixed. So the only thing that you can modify then is how you use time.
Yes.
And then the next one, once you realize that you're not the main character, then remember that there is no blame. You have to share responsibility. So
Yes.
if you have your feedback loops, and the feedback loops that you drew was like, oh, this part was not great, or this wasn't very productive, that you can't blame the individuals, but then that system, you have to zoom in.
Yes.
Go check it out.
Yes.
And that's why I say go look in dumpsters.
Dude,
the reason
Todd
why
Wilson,
you look in dumpsters is systems thinking, because you can see what got thrown away. So it's like, what do you want to know? Like, you don't need AI to tell you production. Take a picture of what gets thrown away every single day. You don't even need a picture. Just go look at it.
Just go look.
And you tell you what got consumed.
Yep.
And that's not to say that these AI tools, I'm obsessed with them. But a actual intelligence, AI, go look over the dumpster and be like, oh, there's some cut off studs in here. Are we framing right now? Or did these get thrown away? So your responsibility is shared. And there's a good example. I don't know if you have any takeaways here. I'm kind of rambling.
Yeah, I just want to add, Todd, Todd Wilson just commented,
okay,
looking in the dumpster is a good feedback loop.
It's like, it's so good.
You said that there's a comment. It's perfect.
I'm pantomiming. This is me so many times. I'm like, you're like, this is younger Thomas. No, like last week in South Carolina, Hootsie, looking into the dumpster, seeing what gets consumed as truth, because you can't hide it, because it's
right there.
Unless you're hauling it out in your own personal car, it's the true one of the true identifiers of what is being used in that day or that week,
that time frame. Yep.
Like, any other ones?
No, that's it. That's
okay. So there's an analogy in here. In the it's a water glass. So it's a person who fills their glass of water. Mm-hmm. So if you walk over to your faucet, you hold a glass and you fill it up with water. That's a system, and you have a reinforcing loop and a feedback loop. Mm-hmm. And Peter Senge gives an example. The first action you take is you start filling the glass. Right? You turn on. This is plumbing, by the way.
Yep.
You turn on your faucet device, and it releases the water from the pipe, and you start to put water in a glass. And the first feedback that you see, the water level rises, and you see it. Yep. How do you know? You see it with your eyeballs. And then you have a reaction. So you have a balancing that I can adjust the faucet based on the rising level of water. This is very complex, by the way, because there's you're using your eyes, your brain, neurons are going off in your brain. Like, you have to understand space, right? We don't even think about it, because it's just like filling up a glass of water. But you repeat that process, like it loops until the glass is full, right? Because you're like, I'm waiting. I'm watching it. If you looked away, it might overflow, or you had the adjuster on the wrong setting, and you get hot water.
Yeah, the lines will cross.
Yeah. So yeah. So that water glass analogy is like you can diagram it. You can say water glass. The decision was I want a glass of water. I'm going to draw. I walk over. I grab a glass. Right. I make a decision to grab a glass, and then I make a decision to turn on the water, and then I watch the water as it fills, and then I turn it off, and then that system is complete. So why does it matter? You can solve complex problems with a system diagram. If you just were like, I got hot water. This was annoying. Let's dump it and start over. And remember, we talked about leverage last time, but you can leverage points in your system, being like things that have small changes. Wow, there's a bunch of bubbles that come out. Bubbles should probably not come out of a faucet. If there's bubbles coming out of my faucet, Jesse, you probably know that there's problems, right?
It's a good chance. Yes.
Yes. So it helps you even maintain your system just by filling a glass of water, and it avoids unintended consequences. So you can see how systems are connected. So you can see how our actions might ripple through the system. So, and then the third one is you can take responsibility. So if you actually drew how to fill a glass of water, you can actually make change and be like, you know what? That bubble might represent we have air in our system somewhere. And that could be a really bad problem in a especially in a domestic water situation. So you can actually take action on that immediately. Say, and you might not even know what to do. You just call a plumber and be like, hey, when I was filling a glass of water, I saw bubbles.
Yeah.
And then from you can be like, all right, I know immediately, maybe not immediately,
right?
But like you can now be like, okay, I have an idea what might be the culprit of this problem. And so you don't have to sit around and spend all kinds of time troubleshooting yourself. You can actually take action on it. So that's why I said, so that I want to give 8 takeaways and then we'll wrap this up. So number 1, if you're drawing a system diagram, identify the issue. Remember the decision. So if you define the issue or the problem, so if you're doing any kind of process mapping or pull planning or Scrum framework, I can go on and on and on. These are all system diagrams.
Yep.
You start by clearly defining the issue or problem you want to analyze. 2, define the boundaries.
Ooh, yes.
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 So pull plan. We're gonna
the whole project.
Yes, we're gonna do the whole project. Like, no, we'd be here for days, and then even if we spent days, it wouldn't even be correct. We're gonna go from start of framing to close up wall, right? In this room. Or this set of rooms. Or we're gonna be like, we're gonna do from the top of dirt to ready for concrete. Right? Those steps. You define the system boundary because you can make it so huge that you need the IMAX theater, or you can narrow it. So by identifying the problem, 1, that helps focus you, and then 2, you have to take that second step of defining the boundary. I always like frame it, put some boundaries around it. 3, the variables. You have to identify the variable. So say, what are things that influence behaviors? Right? Do we have a supply chain? Do we have inspection process? Do we have a permitting issue? Do we have a budget? Right. Like, so I'm saying sometimes you might even need keys, like access. For us to access this thing, we might need a physical key to go turn something off. So to actually get the key is a system. So you might even want to map that process.
Right.
Draw connections and arrows with arcs. Right. not straight lines.
Yeah.
And the reason why you do that, so you can tell the story. So your connections and arrows, I mean, I guess if it's direct, you can draw it straight, but arrows should not only go one direction.
Right.
You should say, if this is a good thing, move forward. If this is a fail,
Yep.
right? Draw it, arc it back. And the reason why you do that is the same reason why we were saying, like, why do you do Scrum? So you can tell in one look, so you don't have to look at the schedule and look at the to-do list.
Yep.
You can see everything in one look, and you're respecting people. I'll just leave it right there. Identify your feedback loops, and that's how you do it. So I say, how do I draw feedback loops, Thomas? Like, just look for your patterns of how things are influenced and just draw them. Yep. Say, hey, if this is good, move forward. If this is an issue, go backwards. Delay, the 4-letter word that has a couple extra letters.
Yep.
If there are delays, draw them in. If there's time,
and expect them.
Yes. So Jason Schroeder talks about buffers.
Yep.
So does Eli Goldratt and his daughter Efrat. Aren't you interviewing soon? Somebody is. Anyways, refine and so identify those delays. Be like, if you want a buffer in front of something, put it in front of it and say, hey, there will be problems. We need to say there's going to be delays, and if there is a delay, we'll deal with it right here.
Right. We got
this. That's a tough one.
Yep. Oh God, yes.
Because that goes right at that red line that goes zigzag through your schedule.
Yep.
Refine and test. Systems thinking diagrams. It's not a one-time process. Yep. 7th takeaway is go ahead and put the date on your system diagram, because you're going to modify it as things develop. That's why I'm obsessed with naming conventions. The first thing, if you're saving a Word document, should be the date. And that way we know when the last time we touched it. I suppose nowadays you can see in the metadata when things were documented. So I'm showing my age now, but you should refine and testing. And the last one I will say is iterate and adapt. This is not a do not do. You're doing it wrong. These are all things I've said previously, and I'm trying to tell people, like, don't do this. Systems diagram are not static, number 1. 2, they're not wrong. Anything you draw on a whiteboard is immediately correct.
Yes. Yes.
Even if you like draw it in the wrong way, someone would be like, no, it goes the other way. But if you didn't, remember the dance, like the high school dance thing? If you didn't draw that arrow, that other person would have been like, no, it's not actually that way. It's the opposite way. That's why we do goal plans.
Yes.
It's because if you put it wrong, then you can adjust it immediately.
Yes.
So even if you screw up and you draw something on the whiteboard wrong, you can immediately react. But if you didn't draw anything, then we're just all in a giant stalemate. Right?
Yep. So, in our assumptions. Oh, yeah.
So how to draw a system diagram. There are many ways to do it. You can do it with Post-it notes. You can do it with whiteboards, Miro. What are some other online tools? Microsoft Planner. Like, there's so many. There's so many tools. My contribution to LinkedIn is the physical building. Like, I was the project superintendent on the San Francisco headquarters.
Yep.
Inside that building, dogs are getting excited. I'm getting excited. Inside that building, they have these rooms with whiteboards everywhere because they draw their system diagram. They have little huddle rooms.
Yep.
And I really like that. So the good people of LinkedIn, they have a stable floor to at least do that process. That's my contribution. But like, they also influenced me because I was like out there doing the punch list and be like, damn, this is cool. I like this like setup over here. So they influenced me in reverse.
Yes.
But that's my takeaways. Anything else you got? That's all I got for today.
No, I think a diagram, like an actual something that we can show when we talk through that next week is going to help people. Because I mean, even something as simple as the filling of the glass, but like an image that we can bring up on the screen, like I could share screen and show it to help people understand the arrows, the arc of the arrows and stuff. Because again, we're talking about diagrams and we're just talking about it. But if we show it, we'll be able to help people make those connections. But aside from that, I'm down. Let's do this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. One of the diagrams is like a snowball rolling down a hill.
Yeah.
And as a snowball rolls down a hill, it grabs more snow and it becomes huge.
Yep.
And that's a great example of it. But
yes.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Awesome.
We'll set it up for next time. We'll break one down. I'll get one queued up.
Yes, totally. Well, I want to say shout out to Mr. Todd, Miss Maria, Mr. Adam, and everybody else that came on to hang out and listen to the genius. And congratulations to you, Thomas, because you nailed it. You put a challenge out for 80s and 90s movies, and you connected systems thinking, the fifth discipline, to The Breakfast Club and the Goodfellas, which that was
your shine box. Yeah.
So, all right, man, we'll do it again in a couple weeks. We'll see y'all later.
Thank you.
Peace.